citizens of St. Mary Parish. Is this referring to, because I would like to ask some questions about the instructional continuity plan and comment on those things that they have said. So are you only asking about the health emergency?
Currently, yes, I'm asking that you pass the public health emergency plan that was provided to us by Forethought and that was reviewed by Bob Hammonds.
Okay, and then we're going to consider the instructional continuity plan next.
Yes, ma'am, that's in the next agenda item.
Okay.
All right, at this time, we just need to do something in regards to the public policy for the health emergency.
Make a motion that we approve.
Mrs. Griffin makes that motion to adopt. Mr. Alfred seconds. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any? I'm sorry. Yes.
Before we said all in favor, I wanted to ask if some of the, I don't know if the public has seen the public health emergency plan.
We have not.
The public health emergency is the policy that was provided to us by Forethought, and
Can we see that?
that is part.
It's right there. Just have it read. I mean, give this to him. You may not need enough of the other one. It's up there, but just give them the highlights or the important parts so that they'll know what we are actually approving right now.
Essentially, what you're approving right now is a policy that commits the board to implement the administrative regulations and procedures for safely reopening schools, that the superintendent and staff shall rely on these practices, guidelines, and suggestions of LDOE in coordination with DHH. To the extent the superintendent deems necessary, the school system will comply with government and safety mandates. Superintendent is authorized to revise plans for schools adopted by the board regarding the reopening. However, if you skip down a little bit, it says that the superintendent shall notify the board of any revisions to school public health emergency plans, which for us is part of our reopening plan. And then it also cites that the board adopts and incorporates Bulletin 741, Chapter 4 changes, as well as standards that are outlined in our continuity plan for emergency closures of district schools and reopening. The plan itself has all the details that are part of the BESI guidelines. The policy is just kind of a general overview.
And I would like to also state and make sure that it is correct. It says to revise, the superintendent is authorized to revise plans for schools adopted by the school board. So we have not adopted this as of yet.
That's on the next, that's the next item. Yes, ma'am.
All right, all in favor of that
Oh, we
motion,
have a
please
question.
indicate by saying
We do have a
aye.
question.
Thought we voted already.
You have a question? Craig has a question.
He's spoken already.
We've already had public
But you
comment.
said that the public can comment before you vote on any item.
You did.
We gave you that position. Go ahead, say something if you want to say something.
Specific to this policy, just reiterating Ms. Rack's concern, the statement that says, to the extent the superintendent deems necessary for the school system to comply with governmental and safety mandates, the superintendent is authorized to revise plans for schools adopted by the school board regarding reopening. This suggests that the superintendent can make the decisions that he or she deems necessary without coming to the board. If this policy were to stand alone, that's what it reads, without the phrase added to it that Mrs. Rack suggested. That means that she can revise this policy as she sees fit. Or any superintendent that succeeds her.
Thank you for your comment. All in favor of the motion, please
Didn't we
indicate by
vote on
saying
this
aye.
motion already?
We have not voted upon the plan.
Didn't we vote on this
We have to
motion
vote
already?
on this policy.
The policy?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Once again, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
We have one nay. The motion carries.
No revisions.
All right, next item, the St. Mary Parish Instructional Continuity Plan. Dr. Bagwell.
The St. Mary Parish Continuity Plan for Emergency Closures of District Schools and then the reopening for 2021 was initially introduced to you at the regular meeting in July. We have made some adjustments to that in order to meet the BESI Policy 741 stipulations. We have added an Appendices, which begins on page 32. And those appendices are designed to outline, again, the exact stipulations that are part of BESI Bulletin 741, which specify, for example, masks that have to be worn by students in grades 3 through 12. In addition to incorporating the stipulations out of Bulletin 741, it also includes our procedural guidance for St. Mary Parish schools to implement those changes. So for example, page 32, Appendix 1, guidelines for face coverings. What you see at the beginning is a definition of a face covering. That was provided by LDOE. Then if you go down about midway down the page, you see some bullets regarding the type of face covering that can be worn. That guidance comes from district staff. So we've integrated the state guidelines with how we will implement this in St. Mary Parish. If you look at Appendix 2 on page 33, those stipulations for transportation come directly from Bulletin 741, Chapter 4, but it's also part of the Strong Start guidance that was given to us by the Louisiana Department of Education. It sets capacity limits for bus transportation, and again, those things were all outlined by the state. On page 34, Appendix 3, the health and safety guidelines for reopening schools. Those health and safety guidelines come from Bulletin 741, Chapter 4, but it also includes some elements that were redefined to us as guidance in the Strong Start from the Louisiana Department of Education. This includes things like group size in the different phases. Currently, we are in phase 2. So group size is limited to 25, and that includes the teacher. Part of that information is also presented at the beginning of the plan when we talk about the different phases of reopening. Group composition is defined there. That primarily comes from Bulletin 741, Chapter 4, which references static groupings, how you would move kids from one place to another to make sure that the composition of the group stays continuous. And if it doesn't, the mitigating factors that you have to follow, if like, for example, in a high school, students are moving from class to class without staying together as a group. It goes through the physical standards for use of facilities. That references the fact that if you have a gymnasium, for example, you can put in 2 groups, but there has to be a partition between those 2 groups. Same thing in the cafeteria. It talks about groups being outdoors, and it talks about the entry and exit points. You don't want students congregating, coming into the school or leaving the school. So schools are having to reconfigure their entry and exit points, and even arrival and dismissal to try to segment those groups. Talks about monitoring. The monitoring factor, the health and wellness checks as students come into school. They have to have a temperature check. They have to wash their hands. They have to stay 6 feet apart to the extent possible. Talks about the environmental cleaning and personal hygiene. High-touch surfaces must be cleaned frequently. Again, students have to wash their hands. Students are allowed to use hand sanitizer throughout the day, but they really need to wash their hands, especially when they arrive at school, before they eat, and even when they leave school. That every 2-hour increment can be integrated with hand washing and hand sanitizer. It talks about face coverings. Talks about the fact that kids from pre-K to grade 2 can wear a face covering, but it's not mandated by the state for them to do so. Hygienic supplies. School employees are going to be provided with hygienic supplies, including soap, hand sanitizer, the spray, the sanitizing spray to wash down the desk, and paper towels. It talks about the fact that school visitors are going to be limited in our buildings, and then the student programming determinations regarding in-person consultations and things like that. Appendix 4, on page 35, continues to define, and again, most of this comes from Bulletin 741, Chapter 4. Shared communal spaces have to be limited in group size, just like classrooms. The fact that our water fountains will have to be closed, so we will have to provide water options for our students. The fact that you need to use protective barriers in areas such as the front office. Cafeteria is going to change drastically because you're not going to be able to have all the students come to the cafeteria and eat. Students will have to be able to eat in their classrooms, especially those that are in static groups. The social distancing measures that have to be taken in the classroom, in the hallways, as students enter and exit the building. Student drop-off and pickup process, again, we have to have multiple entrances. We have to define that specifically as far as where kids are going to be able to come in and out to try to make sure that they stay separate. It references large gatherings at extracurricular activities, which are going to be minimal, unfortunately, and then athletics and vocal music and band. Those things cannot begin until phase 3. And currently we're in phase 2, and we expect to be in phase 2 for a little while. Page 36, Appendix 5, talks about the virtual learning options for students. Parents are allowed to select that as an option for education as we open the school year. The virtual learning option has been included on the survey. And then we also have parents who are signing forms, basically committing that that's the option that they want for their children. And then at the end, page 37, is contingency planning for special education students. And that continues to page 38. So that appendices, again, was added to the continuity plan that you were provided with at the regular board meeting in July. And it includes all of the details that Bessie passed in Bulletin 741 that regulates what school systems have to do for the reopening process. Do you have any questions?
Ms. Wright?
Ms.
Well, I
Wright?
have a number of questions. We could take his first. If you have only one.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Madam Vice President. I don't know if I have a question as much as I have an observation. But if I had to frame it in a question, I would ask Dr. Bagwell, and I'm not going to direct my question to her, I'm directing it to the board, because I'm not supposed to address people in the audience. But I would ask Dr. Bagwell, if I were you all, of all of the things that she's presented, all of the slides that have been put up on the screen, my one question would be, how are you going to do it? Because I submit to you, what we have heard and seen this afternoon is not a plan. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not a plan. What has appeared on the screens has been a repeat of the guidance or guidelines that the state and federal agencies have put before us to say this is what you must do. To simply copy and paste those things in an instrument does not constitute a plan. Now, I am a certified grant writer. I have written state, federal, and private grants. I have developed programs. I have written plans and procedures for any type of activity you could imagine. And when you devise a plan, you explain how to. How will these things be done? What I saw is the language that is usually embedded in an instrument that is provided as a guideline to say, here are the things, because I mean, it's stated in the document on several of the slides. This is what schools should do. So we understand what our schools should do. How are we going to do it? How do you translate that into a how-to plan to specify details, steps of implementation to say how those things are going to occur? I don't see that in that document. I can't refer to it as a plan. I don't see that.
You're asking a
That's
question.
what makes me nervous.
You've asked your question. We thank you for your question.
Yes.
All right. Mrs. Rock, you wanted to say something?
Okay. Beg your pardon? Okay, I have a couple of things to say.
To me? Or,
I'm
sorry, I thought you said you wanted to ask me, you wanted to answer my question.
No, to the board, which includes that.
I would love if somebody could answer that question. I would love Dr. Bagwell to answer that question.
I can answer your
She
question.
should answer it for y'all.
Let me text it this. Dr. Bagwell didn't go far enough into her presentation.
But that's what we need.
Well, you asked the question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You raised your hand and the board members hadn't had a chance to talk yet, and then they would have.
I apologize.
Prompted her to go into it a little deeper. So if you bear with us just a little while longer.
Yes, ma'am. I apologize.
That's okay, just have your seat.
Thank you.
Dr. Bagwell, I'm sorry, Mr. Wright. Can you go into the 2-week plan that you?
Before Dr. Bagwell gets up, I'm going to say this, okay? I've heard what Tahivia Browder said. I've heard what Ms. Patty said. I've heard what Mr. Craig said. And the thing that I got from this was that the stakeholders do not know enough about this. Now, Dr. Bagwell can get up and tell this to us, but still a lot of the stakeholders have not had a chance to address what the questions. They're asking me questions, they might be asking you questions, but they have not been able to address some of the questions themselves. My thing last week was to tell them there is going to be a forum. I even put it on my Facebook page. I looked at the school board page. There was no indication in the information that was going on in July that would be a forum. So I put it on my Facebook page. There is going to be a forum, and some people start looking at the forum maybe because of it was announced at the school board meeting by the assistant superintendent. But at the forum, there were comments made, but there was no indication from a forum where parents could ask questions. So to me, what we should have done would be to take a forum, make a forum, and have this forum done at certain places, because everybody cannot gather. Have this forum done, and then because we have not heard from the parents. We actually have not heard from the teachers. And school board members that I talk to, they've heard from parents in a forum. They've heard from the teachers in a forum. We have some kind of survey we've done, but we've never asked teachers. This is the first time I've heard that anyone has asked teachers, how do you feel? Because you're the ones that have to be here with the children. So to me, we do need to stop and get forums, hear what they're saying, and then come back and make a decision. We represent our constituents. If we can't hear from our constituents, we can't say what I feel. And I can tell you how I feel because I have 2 grandchildren in the public school system. I can tell you how I feel because I have a daughter who teaches in the public school system. I can tell you how some, but I need to know how all the they need to have the opportunity to speak. So I think that we need to stop plan something to hear the constituents to speak, and then make this decision. Are you making this decision because this is how you feel? Because the plan, and the plan is a good plan. I agree, the plan is a good plan, but a lot of things are not in place. I'm looking at the 741. Who's going to space the children out on the bus? I talked to you about that. Who's going to space those children out when they get on the bus? Who's going to ride that bus and tell them where they have to sit? Who's going to talk about those kids with diabetes and sickle cell anemia and cancer in the schools? Who's going to do all of these? These are some of the questions that I have. But what are the questions? And we've heard something that some of the other people say it, but we do need to give the parents a chance. And you can't have it both ways. If we put this off from the opening, from the day that we're talking about, then the parents have to understand you're going to have to make these days up. You might have to go into June. But give them that opportunity. Let them know. And then we come back. Because we know what our constituents feel.
A lot.
There are people in the community that would like to delay the opening. There are also people in the community are ready for our schools to open. Those parents with dire concerns can go with a virtual program. And in 9 weeks, they can come back to an open school. But to keep the schools closed and not give some parents the opportunity to say, I want to send my kids to the school, is just the opposite of what you want to do. I think both of those issues are taken care of.
Okay,
If a parent does not want to send his kid to school right now, he can get in the virtual program. 9 weeks from now, he can put the kid back into the school.
Where does that say 9 weeks from now?
That's part of the virtual learning.
It says it right over here.
Because I see what the parents are signing is my child may choose to return on site at the end of the semester, January.
That's for high school.
That's only for high school, but still it's in January.
What about those of us that have children in high school?
Let's
Wait a minute,
let's have some moderation.
Mr. Taylor, this is a school board issue. We've given that guy a chance to talk. He's got up there twice. I would wish he wouldn't interrupt our meetings. Would you please control the meeting?
That's it. Anyone else on the board have any questions for Dr. Bagwell?
I wasn't finished.
All right.
You didn't go into the plan where, what you're gonna do for 2 weeks. And let me say this. I understand how you feel, I do. I have a grandson, not in this parish, but in Baton Rouge, he's 9. And he has autism, well, Asperger's. So I am very concerned about him. Baton Rouge is doing it differently, a little bit differently, but we don't have that we could delay for a little while, but your president and your governor are saying start school. I was not happy with them when they said that, but they said it. So I have a couple of questions as to the survey. I know there was one, but I don't know if you have a result. Can you give, this has been my thing on surveys. You don't just take them and then don't give a result. We need the results to know what the constituents want out there. Just to know what they're saying. That's the purpose of the survey. Have you had it analyzed yet?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and to kind of integrate my answer to you and the answer to Ms. Rack, we conducted the parent survey as a way of getting feedback from parents about their intentions for their children and their concerns. That was one of the questions. Getting the survey results back, we had about 5,200 people. We had 5,200 people not take the survey, but 5,200 kids reported, because we asked parents to complete the survey for every child, because what might be okay for one child in your household may not be the option that you want for your other child. So 5,200 does not represent individual families, it represents individual children. Of those results, we received a number of questions and concerns. We created a frequently asked questions document that you can access on our website so that people could see that we were responding. There were some instances that were very specific questions and unique questions, and those responses were actually provided back to that person individually.
But were they incorporated into your plan that you currently have, all of the concerns?
Yeah, well, the survey was basically, what is your intention? Do you want your child to go virtual? Do you want them to go back to school on campus? And then some other information, internet providers, things like that. And then, like I said, there was an open-ended question for questions and concerns. That information is being followed up on now. Currently, we got the results on Monday. Beginning Monday afternoon, early Tuesday, our principals started contacting individual parents to discuss their concerns and to follow up on any questions they might have had about whether they should bring their kid back on campus or whether they should participate in virtual. At the same time, we provided schools with basically a virtual enrollment form so that any parent who was committing themselves to enrolling their child in a virtual option, they could pick up those forms, and we're gathering that information, because once we get those numbers together, then we need to decide on, how many teachers do we need for those things? How many devices do we need? That kind of thing.
Talk about your plan.
Okay. So as far as the plan is concerned, as we created the draft, that information was placed on the website. The purpose of the forums was to allow for information to be disseminated in an organized manner. We started the first night with just foundationally, what does it take to reopen the schools? The second week, we focused on more of the instruction, talking about the virtual option, talking about a homeschool option for those people that might be interested in homeschool, talking about what the elementary program is going to look like, what the middle school program is going to look like, what the high school program is going to look like, because we did have to make adjustments to try to, again, follow the safety guidelines that we were issued by the state. We have another forum coming up this Wednesday where we're going to focus on the technology and devices, and then review the information as well. And we'll also come back to those frequently asked questions to try to address those in a forum in addition to what we've already answered on the website. I can tell you that our principals, our supervisors, Dr. Dupree, Ms. Vaccarella, our technology people, have been on the phone for weeks answering questions, talking to people personally. Because there's some conversations that need more than just a response to a survey or a post on Facebook. So those calls have been fielded and responses provided, and if they couldn't provide a response, then it's been forwarded to the right person. We've been working on this for months, and we have tried every means possible to get information and to get feedback from those that it most directly impacts, and that's the teachers, the kids, and the parents.
Mrs. Lockett?
Okay, yes, I have a comment to make. A lot of the constituents are concerned and chose virtual learning because they thought school was opening too soon. We might have a different result if we were to at least wait until after Labor Day, knowing that we will have to make up those days because the BETSA requires so many instructional hours. But I would just like us to look at possibly doing that.
Well, and that would be that would be your decision, and the next item on the agenda is actually for us to look at the calendar.
All right, any other questions?
Okay, yeah, it says
Right.
review and adopt adjustments. All right, so, the information that you gave at the last school board meeting, have any changes been made to that information that was given at the last school? Any adjustments were
The
made?
actual plan? No, ma'am, just the appendices that I went through.
Okay, so it's the same plan before, all right. So, from the questions that those parents were given, that you say that you won't have, you all didn't make any changes from that?
No, because there really weren't.
Yes, we did. Yes, ma'am, we did. The days that are going to be changed, that will start has changed, right?
I'm sorry, what?
The days that we're starting school has changed.
No, that's something that you guys will have to consider which is the next.
Oh, that's the
agenda
next
item.
thing.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
well, you're planning for those days to change, okay. I was just trying to answer your question, Ms. Rack.
So do we need to actually vote on this? Since we
Yes, sir, we do.
We need a motion at this time, if the board so chooses, to adopt this plan. Mrs. Wright?
I move that, the school board, adopt a plan to begin, after Labor Day.
Well, we're gonna go to the calendar next, so I think that's kind of putting the cart before the horse. This is just to adopt a plan at this point in time.
If we do it, that's both things.
Well, I'd like to hear Dr. Bagwell's proposal for the calendar.
A motion is on the floor.
All right, do we have a second for that motion? All right, we have a second. Any discussion on that?
I have a question.
Question?
I must be lost, because we just adopted the plan, right? The emergency thing. So now, where are we on the agenda? Is that different from when you start? Okay, I understand that. Is that different from what you're gonna present to us about changing the dates? That's different? Okay, all right.
Mr. DeLotte?
I want to speak against the motion because it's already in the plan that the people that want to wait till Labor Day or after to send their kids to school, they have that option. But there are still quite a few parents out there that want the schools to open. So I don't understand the big argument. If they don't want to send their kids to school, wait till after Labor Day. Go ahead and open the schools as planned, and they will take the kids that want to come to school, and there are already quite a few of them.
And there are also
Any
quite
other
a few of
discussion?
them.
That's a motion.
I just don't see the point in delaying this. Well, we spent, this staff has spent days and weeks and months
from the president.
working on this, and it's been so fluid because we don't know if we're in phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3, so they have to do 3 different option plans on it.
Individual parents can delay it for their kids.
So by waiting 2 weeks, you haven't accomplished anything.
I'd like to.
My kids
Yes,
would like to
Mrs.
be
Griffin.
Pearl.
I'd like to at least hear Dr. Bagwell's plan for opening school, and we can vote on this motion. But right now, we have a motion and a second on the floor
Yes.
to approve the plan with starting after Labor Day, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. I ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Lockett?
Delay until after Labor Day.
Mr. Alfred?
Nay.
Mrs. Rack?
Aye.
Mrs. Griffin?
No.
Mrs. LaSalle?
No.
Mr. Delotte?
No.
Mr. Barbier?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
No.
Motion fails.
All right, the motion fails. So we'll now ask for a motion to adopt the policy.
I'd like to make a motion that we open the school plan by Mr. Superintendent.
That's the next item. We got to approve this plan first.
What's that?
That's the next item.
Okay.
Vote on this
Excuse
first.
me.
I'll make the motion to.
It's the next item.
To adopt the policy, the St. Mary Instructional Continuity Plan.
Yes, sir.
All right, and do I have a second? Mr. Barbier seconds. Any discussion?
Can I speak on that item?
You've already spoken.
I'm talking to the president. I'm talking to the president. Mr. President, may I speak on that item? According to.
I will give you 3 minutes as
Yes, sir.
we
I don't even need
have
3
in our
minutes.
policy.
I don't even need 3
This
minutes.
is not his meeting. You've had your.
You're not the president.
This is a
You
school
are not the
board.
president.
What you're
Mr.
used to do,
President,
man,
my
is
question
run the
is
school
this.
board.
Reclaiming my time.
Let's just let
Mr. President, my question is this. How many of you board members have children enrolled in this public school district? You don't even have to answer that. What is the harm? As we're holding this meeting right now, in my 3 minutes, there are people that are watching this, your constituents, the people that voted you into office, are watching this saying, why not wait 3 or 4 weeks so that you have time to hold these public forums, force your administrator to do her job, come and speak to her constituents, speak to her primary stakeholders, and engage us in meaningful discussion about this so-called plan. What is the harm in that? That is the job that you have been elected to do. But you're sitting here and you're targeting me because of my passion
Because you
for
are
what's happening in this
You're on
room.
the parish council. You're not on the.
This has nothing to do with the parish council.
Mr.
I
Taylor.
am a parent. And you are not silent enough. This has nothing to do with my elected office. I'm a parent.
Have him removed or sit him down.
You need to speak on the.
You don't have to have me removed. I'm going to sit down.
All right, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
I ask for a roll call vote again.
Mr. Folkard?
Nay.
Miss Lockett? Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mrs. Rapp? Ms. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. LaSalle?
Yes.
Mr. Delotte?
Yes.
Mr. Barbier? Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Motion passes.
I'll remove myself.
Now we will move on to the next item. It's review. It's review and adopt adjustments to the 2020-21 St. Mary Parish School calendar. Dr. Bagwell.
In your binder, I have a proposed adjustment to the St. Mary Parish School calendar. Currently, the calendar has 2 days available as far as instructional minutes are concerned that we could utilize as professional development days instead of student contact days. So what I would propose to the board is this. Currently, students are set to return on August the 7th. Rather than having students return on Friday, August 7th, we would convert that from a student contact day to a professional development day. That would allow our teachers to have 4 days of professional development, training, preparation time before students return. With all the extra regulations and procedures that they're going to have to integrate into their classroom, in addition to the virtual trainings that will have to occur, I feel that it's important to give them the extra day. Secondly, incorporated in these proposed adjustments is that students would start attending school on August the 10th, Monday. That we would divide those students into 50% so that we would have half of our students come on Monday, the second half come on Tuesday. First half comes back on Wednesday, second half on Thursday, and then as you notice on the calendar, August 14th would be another added professional development day for teachers. By having our students return on the 10th at 50%, it would allow the teachers time to rehearse, to introduce, to prepare our students for all the additional regulations and procedures that they're going to have to follow. The distancing, the hand washing, the wearing of masks, where they're going to sit in the class and how they're going to move around the classroom, how they're going to move around the building itself. So instead of an elementary teacher having 24 students on Monday the 10th, she would have 10, and she could work with those 10 students to prepare them. Then she would get the second group on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, her first group would come back and she could, review, rehearse, prepare them for the many changes that we have to implement to provide for the health and wellness of our students. Then Friday, the 14th, that would give schools an extra day of training and preparation. They could take the time to reassess what went on those first 4 days. Do they need to make adjustments? Do they need to adjust entry and exit points? Do they need to adjust travel patterns that they created in their hallways? So again, it just gives them a little extra time to prepare for the implementation of the many changes that we have to implement for 2021. By exchanging the 2 student contact days for professional development days, it does not leave us any cushion in instructional minutes should we have an emergency closure for weather or what have you. But as you know, we have the emergency days that we always outline for such occasions. So that's my proposal to the board, that we make those minor adjustments to the calendar, again, to help schools and students prepare for the changes of 2020, 2021.
All right, what are the wishes of the board? Mr. Alfred?
I move that we adopt this calendar, and I also would like to have a question after if we get a second.
All right, do we have a second for that motion? Mrs. LaSalle seconds. Now discussion, Mr. Alfred?
School times, take in and exit, still 7:30 to 2:30 and 8 to 3?
Yes, they are. Those times are still standard, but we are working with principals. They are making some adjustments so that they can release groups of students a little bit earlier, a little bit later.
So they're gonna be able to have time to fit the minimum standards and do all this hand washing and all that?
It will take away from instructional time. Because if you are hand washing, even if you're hand sanitizing, every 2 hours, that's going to take away instructional time.
Right.
Which is why we altered the schedules a little bit to try to allow for more time in the classroom.
Okay, has Bessie?
Inevitably, especially at the beginning, until it becomes, a habit, it will take away from instructional time.
Has Bessie addressed that time?
I'm sorry?
Has Bessie addressed
Not yet, no. They have been asked a few times about whether or not they'll relax instructional minutes, and at this time, they're saying no.
Okay, thank you.
But they do recognize that it will be a taxing thing on schools.
Mrs.
Yes,
Wright?
ma'am.
Well, speaking of time, will this time stay the same for teachers also?
No, teachers will be asked to come in earlier than normal because of the procedural changes as students enter the building.
How much earlier than normal and how much later than normal?
They're going to be asked to come in 30 minutes prior to what we call the tardy bell. So if school starts at 7:30, they'll be asked to come at 7.
So they normally had to be there, what, at 7:20?
Normally, yeah, right. Normally it was 20.
So we
10
talking about
minutes.
20 minutes.
10 before and 10 after, right.
Any other questions?
Just a statement. I just want to reiterate and make sure that the public knows that there will be a week delay in when the kids are supposed to be coming to school. Instead of coming to school that week that you thought you were going to come, it's going to be the 10th. And even when you start on the 10th, if you choose to go to school and not virtual, only 50% of you will go on Monday and Tuesday, and the other 50 will go on Tuesday and Thursday. And the way that that is chosen will be by alphabets, A through L.
We're gonna ask schools to divide up those groups, because what could happen in a teacher's classroom is she may not have many kids whose last name is A through D. So we want to try to balance the classes out as well. And fortunately, in our school system, we have JTEX communication, so we will be able to inform parents as far as which day their groups will come. But we're going to let the schools do that at their level so that they can get a balance between the two groupings.
And then Friday, it's nobody goes to school. Well, no
Right,
students.
Friday, no
go to school on
students,
Friday.
and then we come regular phase 2 reopening on the 17th.
And if we're in phase 3, then we realize that as soon as it's phase 3, it's back to school as normal.
Right, phase 3 is like 75% bus capacity, so you would be back on a normal schedule.
All right. Those parents who have children in different grades, would they be allowed to go on the same day?
Yes, ma'am. That's another reason why we want to do it at the school level, because the school knows those kids. Because you could have a situation where you have 2 or 3 children in a household, and they may not have the same last name. So you want to make sure that you're putting households together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let me comment on something that was said, that we will be a week later. It will be a difference. It'll be a difference for elementary students. Am I understanding that correctly? But it will be the same 2 days for high school students.
Right. When we start back on the 17th in phase 2 reopening, you'd have all your elementary students coming to school, and your middle and high would be coming in the 2 groups, the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday.
I'm talking about on the 10th through the 14th.
It's the 10th, yeah, the week of the 10th, you would have the 50% for everybody.
Okay,
So
which
you'd have
would be
Group
the
A on
same
Monday,
thing.
Group B on Tuesday, Group A back on Wednesday, and Group B on Thursday.
Okay, which is the same thing for 9th through 12th. That's what I'm saying.
Right, it's just different days, yeah.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. All right, that finishes up the agenda items. We need a motion to adjourn. Could I have one at this time?
So
Mrs.
moved.
Black makes that motion. Mrs. Griffin seconds. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you for being here. We'll take a 5-minute break before we go back into our session for education.